All right, so brand new unit. Okay, sort of. Membrane transport was a little bit of a carryover, so starting fresh. So what we want to start talking about now is metabolism. Okay, and we're going to do this in a very focused way. So when we talk about metabolism, what we're really going to be talking about is energy. Okay, and the pathway that energy takes in your cells and in your bodies. Okay, so we're going to note very quickly that we don't mean metabolism in that when I eat, I have such a high metabolism, I just can't gain weight. Okay, we mean it in that when you consume energy, what exactly is that doing in your body and where is it going? Okay, so brand new roadmap. Hooray! Okay, fresh start. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what exactly do we mean when we're talking about energy and ultimately matter. Okay. And where do energy and matter come from and go to? Okay, so how do we get them into your cells and body in the first place? And so some of this might look a little familiar. It overlaps with physics, which for some of you might have been the last science class you took before you appeared here. Okay, if not, don't worry about it. So we're going over it. Okay. Then we're going to start looking at what exactly do I mean when I say metabolism. Because like I said, I'm not really talking about it from a nutritional standpoint. We're talking about it from a cellular standpoint. Okay, how are we converting energy from one step to a next as your cells utilize it? Okay, and then lastly, we're going to look at how energy is broken down, and we're going to look at a whole new version of equilibrium, okay, which fundamentally means the same thing, okay, but it means a different kind of system. We're talking about energetics than it did in solutes. Okay, so let's get rocking and rolling. Okay, so the key feature here, what's going on, is your cells ultimately are going to take in energy, okay, and transform it into something useful. Okay, we kind of have this in the back of our head because we already know really the only useful form of energy in any way is ATP. Okay, so whatever they're taking in, it's not any good. We got to do something with it. Okay, but we're not consuming raw ATP. Okay, that'd be like biting down on electricity. Okay, so if we look at energy as a term, okay, what we mean to say is this is a form of power. Okay, which we're usually getting from some kind of chemical resource. Okay, so when I say that, I mean like food. Okay, so for us, that's the cheeseburger. Okay, for a plant, that's like sunlight, right? So there's a variation on the theme depending on what you are, but you're taking in some kind of chemical. Okay, and we're using that to do some kind of work. Okay, so to do a thing. And we can mean this quite literally. You can lift something heavy with it. Okay, so I can lift a pen, lift a heavy object. But at a cellular level, when we say we're doing work, okay, we move things around, right? Remember, I use ATP to move a vesicle. That's doing work, right? Okay, so I use chemical energy to do a job. Okay, cause something to happen. Okay, so as we're going to find, right, we just take energy in, we usually alter its form, okay, we just move it around. That's all that's happening. Okay, so the way that this actually happens, we call it the laws of thermodynamics. Okay, fancy physicsy words. Okay, so that means how exactly are we taking in this energy? and then changing it into a form that we can use to do the thing. Okay, with me so far? Everybody feel good still? All right, shiny nuggets. All right, the first law of thermodynamics, it very simply says that we do not create energy. It doesn't poof out of nowhere, right? And we're not magicians of energy. So like we just mentioned, it has to come from somewhere. Okay, so for us often that is le cheeseburger. Okay, for plants, okay, ultimately all energy comes from the sun. Okay, plants gets energy from the sun. Okay, bunny eats plants. Okay, wolf eats bunny, blah, 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 blah. Okay, all energy comes from somewhere. Okay, so all we do with energy is move it around. Okay, sun gives it to the plant. Okay, the plant's able to take that sunlight energy, right, transform it into plant. Okay, rabbit eats plant. Okay, that energy has now been moved from plant to rabbit. Okay, so we've transferred it. Okay, that energy now becomes rabbit. Right, becomes assimilated into rabbit tissue. Happy rabbit, blah, 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 blah. Rabbit gets eaten by bobcat. Okay, energy is now transferred from rabbit to bobcat. But that's all that's happening, right? We haven't, y'all saw that I just licked my screen instead of my fingers, right? That was great. Okay, we didn't magic that energy out of nowhere. The bobcat didn't magically appear energy. It just moved. All we've done is move it around. The bobcat dies. Okay, that energy is transferred back to the soil. Mushrooms then get that energy. Super gross. All right, so that's all this first law of thermodynamics is saying. We're just moving it around. Okay, not so bad. Everybody still feel good? Okay, the second one's a little heatier. Generally with the second one, what we're saying is every time we go to transfer that energy, we get what's called entropy. Okay, entropy is fundamentally a fancy physics word for chaos. I don't know why they just use chaos, because chaos sounds a little cooler. Okay, but ultimately, if we picture, okay, bunny eating plants, okay, when I go to consume said plants, okay, I do not get 100% of the energy in the plant, right? Even if I eat somehow 100% of that plant, I rip up every piece of root and eat all of the bits to it, which literally nobody does, right? Because ew. Okay? But let's say we did. Okay? I can't get 100% of the energy that was in that plant. Okay? So every exchange or transfer of energy, so our exchanges, is incomplete. So our conversions are incomplete. Okay? Chaos. And now there's a reason for this. Okay, but basically we lose bits in this transfer. A lot of bits, ultimately. Okay, that's all this first page thing. We've got a second page that helps us understand why. But page 1 just says you can't have it all. So every time I pass that on, right, sunlight, you don't get 100% of the sunlight. And that one's pretty easy to understand. Okay, but I don't get 100% of the kale. Okay, the bobcat doesn't get 100% of the rabbit. We kind of get that too, right? You never eat 100% of the rabbit anyway. But even if I did, you can't digest all of the bones. We kind of even get that. Okay, so we're losing some of that chaotic energy. All right, so here's partly why. All right, so here are our 2 laws of thermodynamics. Okay, my left panel is showing my first law. Here we have bear eats salmon. And simply transfer and transforms. Bear eats salmon, okay? The energy that's in that salmon is being transferred to our bear. Okay, and he's going to incorporate that energy into his bearness. And bear now has that energy. It is part of bear. Okay, that one's not so bad. The first law of thermodynamics is a little easier to get our feet on. Okay, here's what's going on with the second law of thermodynamics. Okay, bear is not going to eat 100% of fish. Okay, we've lost some there. And even if bear did eat whole fish, okay, and was able to somehow digest whole fish, okay, we would lose some of the energy in the fish, okay, because we're not capable of taking in all of that energy. Chaos. Okay, and here's what's happening. As our cells begin to process the energy of le fish, okay, we respire out some of that energy as carbon dioxide and water. See, I put it inside my mask this time. Right? If you feel your breath is warm and wet, right? This is the reason you're all wearing masks right now. Because that water in your breath is actually what's making all this crap spread around. Okay? It's also the byproduct of the energy. So in this case, right, it's part of the reason, okay, that we can't keep all of the energy. I also noted, right, that my breath was warm. Your body is warm right now, right? So that heat is the other reason that we do not get 100% of that energy. So while a lot of that energy goes into you, okay, it makes your body stronger, makes you grow, you can put it into reproduction, and everything else you do during the day, okay, some of that is just heat loss, okay, loss in your breath, which is warm, okay, loss in body heat exchange, okay, and none of that is going into you, okay, or in this case, bear. Okay, so all of this is that entropy, okay, chaotic energy. Okay, now remember, it's not destroyed. Okay, this is all real stuff. It's going to go back into the ecosystem. Heat is energy. Okay, that then can be used by other things, bacteria, for example. Okay, it just can't be used by bear, okay, or bobcat, or rabbit, or whatever. That feel a little bit better? I can tell we're very invested in bear and fish story. Okay, the last thing here is the law of conservation of mass. So matter, okay, which is the actual tissue, okay, just like energy cannot be created and destroyed, right? So in the same way that energy itself is transformed and transferred from one place to another, okay, matter is as well. Right, so when I eat plant material, okay, that's actual tissue. Okay, I chew on the plant material, a yum leaf, okay, that goes in my body. Okay, I can break down those components, okay, and then assimilate those into my tissues. Can use them to build my tissues up. Okay, I can't build my own body mass, okay, my actual body, out of thin air. Okay, it has to come from something else. Okay, so an easy way to picture this, and the kind of the example I've got here, is if we imagine taking something like those fizzy tablets, right? So you have a hard fizzy tablet, like those like Alka-Seltzer tablets we had, right? And you can add the water to it and it turns into a fizzy gas, right? If you attach the balloon over the top, it'll catch the gas. So it looks like your tablet disappears into nothingness, but all it's disappeared into is a gas, right? The fizzy that you got in the cup, right? So it hasn't disappeared, right? It's just transformed into another matter type, gas. Okay, the part we don't care about, so I'm going to drink that part. Okay. Some of it's dissolved into the water, some of it's released into the air. All right, those are all our laws of. Any questions about those? Shiny. All right, so keeping in mind in particular, right, where energy comes from and the idea that we want to take it in, transfer it around, right, and transform it, this is where the idea of metabolism from a cellular level comes in. Okay, so metabolism is the process by which, okay, we can take in both matter and energy and actually do that transformation process. Okay, so when the rabbit is eating that lettuce, okay, metabolism is how she is going to be able to get that energy from that lettuce, right, or get that tissue from that lettuce and do something with it. Okay, so it's going to be following all those laws of thermodynamics we just talked about. Okay, so the term metabolism ultimately, okay, remember, is not this nutritional business. It has nothing to do with weight or any of that business. Okay, it's one of those like bad colloquialism issues, like theory and hypothesis were, and law. Okay, metabolism here is talking about chemical reactions that we use to break down and move around energy and matter. Okay, so let's take a look at the different pathways of metabolism. Okay, so a metabolic pathway, okay, is a roadmap of these chemical reactions. Okay, so tracing what happens as we break down or build up, okay, these transformations of energy and matter. Okay, so it would be like literally drawing out what's going on as we do these things. Okay, And while we're never going to do more than a handful of steps, right, because we have other things to do with our lives, we want to keep in the back of our minds that most of the time, in order to change lettuce to rabbit, for example, these are thousands of steps long. Okay. The one that we'll end up doing, we're going to go through cellular respiration in the next step, next unit. We're going to do even cellular respiration light. I'm not going to make you learn the whole thing because we have other things to do with our lives. And even that's going to feel like it has a lot of steps, and we're not going to do thousands. Okay. So here's the key. When we're looking at these things, we're taking some sort of very specific molecule. Okay, so like glucose, it's a very specific molecule, right? One we're very familiar with. Okay, and we're going to go through a very specific stepwise process, like a recipe, to result in a certain product, whatever our goal is. Let's say ATP. It does not have to be what our goal is, but let's use that as an example. Okay, so to get there, like a recipe, okay, each step is going to be catalyzed by an enzyme, so something you have to do. Okay. And you're going to have steps in between. Okay, so I started with glucose. Okay, perhaps I warmed it. Like you take that stick of butter, right? And you're going to warm it slightly. Or mash it with a fork. Kind of like akin to baking cookies if you've ever done this before. Okay, then you end up with mashed butter, right? Okay, then step 2, I don't know. Okay, we'll add a little bit of sugar with a baking cup. Okay, and mash again. Now we have a new subproduct. And you keep going and going and going until you heat in the oven. And then you end up with cookies, right? So this is it. We look at the entire recipe to start with our specific starting molecule and get a very specific product. And each step catalyzed, meaning sped up or helped. The oven, the whisk, the special floury baking cup thingies. And we'll talk about enzymes at the end of this unit, so you'll get an idea of the different kinds of things that they are. But for now, we'll just talk about them as helpers. Okay, general concept of metabolic pathway, and I like to akin them to recipes. Okay, because they're very specific stepwise patterns. Right, to get from a very specific starting place, stick of butter, right, to a very specific ending place, chocolate chip cookies. I have a lot of food analogies. You're either a lawyer or you're food in this class. There's nothing in between. Jasmine's like, yeah, no, that's how she is. Pretty much. All right, any questions so far? So let's look at some examples, right? Examples are good. Non-cookie examples. Okay, so we have catabolic pathways. Okay, so the goal of a catabolic pathway is to release energy that is stored in a molecule. Okay, so in this case, we're going to have big molecules or bigger molecules. And we want to break them apart and get the energy that's inside. Okay, so this one is like our glucose. Okay, the one that we keep coming around to, it's going to be the most familiar. So we've got a big sugar molecule. Okay, so we're going to go through this process to keep breaking it down, bust into smaller pieces. And we got a taste of this a little bit in lab this week, right? Okay, and by breaking it down just a little bit, we already got some ATP out, right? We broke it in half. A little bit of ATP came out. Okay, so the energy that are in these bonds comes out. Okay, so the way I might think about this is catabolic has the word cat in it. Okay, so you just want to think like cats are always doing like the knocking things off the shelf business. Okay, so they're knocking things down and breaking them. Okay, so catabolic's all about breaking. And when we break, crash! Okay, the big sound, big energy. Okay, I'm going to shut up. I get too excited about this stuff sometimes. So we will start here, re-review here. So if you feel like you're like rushing to get everything on the slide, don't panic. I will start here so you can finish up on Monday. Catabolic is going to be the teacher's question. As you're finishing up, also please don't forget Jasmine has her first content review on Monday. At 7. And Monday is the what, 5th? So make sure you do your socrative. Sorry I ran over like 1 or 2 minutes. I apologize. I will be better. Please make sure you do fill out your socratives. Remember, they're for attendance, and as you saw today, I do use them to try to get some extra practice in, and Jasmine will also use them for her review session. Also, please don't forget SWOT. If you haven't emailed me, please email me. You have till the end of the day today. Please have a good weekend.
Okay, so somebody just messaged me and said there's also a pre-calc study session Monday at 7. So should I?
Well, so it's up to you.
That's never happened before. I've always had mine Monday at 7. There's no stuff on. Okay. Then it is what it is. It's a little extra for ego, right? So I would say don't